for listening to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, keeping you up to date with the latest in American soccer. And don't forget to subscribe.
On this episode of Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, Noah Davis joins us to discuss the U.S. men's national team's qualifier against Honduras and their performance on Tuesday. With the national team sitting in fourth place in CONCACAF, is the team actually good? Are the expectations set just a little too high? Jurgen Klinsmann constantly bashed MLS. Bruce Arena seems to embrace it. Is MLS good or bad for the U.S. men's national team? All this on this week's episode of Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast. I'm Steven Jodderand. Armand Kafai is in Dallas. How's it going, Armand?
It's going good. Going good. How are you, Steven?
I'm doing well. We got a guest on the line for a segment here. Noah Davis. He is the editor at American Soccer Now, contributes to ESPN FC, has covered the U.S. men's national team since 2006. How's it going, Noah?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, guys.
Pleasure talking to you. And let's get right to it. U.S. men's national team, and boy, going into this break about a week ago, more than about 10 days ago, none of us had expected we'd be sitting here with 1 point from a possible 6. But, I mean, what were your initial thoughts going back to the Honduras-U.S. game?
I think it looked very, very, very dire until right at the end, and I think that goal that Bobby Wood scored is gonna be huge if they do end up qualifying for the World Cup. I mean, 0 points there, and Honduras getting 3 points. That's a huge difference than both coming out of that game with a win. I mean, still a lot of work to do, but work that seems like they can actually do it in the next 2 games. And if they had lost that game, that would have been just a complete and utter debacle.
Is it not a debacle now already?
I mean, it's a debacle if they don't qualify for the World Cup. That those 2 performances were not great. I thought they were actually got kind of unlucky against Costa Rica. I thought they outplayed Costa Rica for long stretches of that game. I was at Red Bull Arena, and they really had a lot more chances. I think Keylor Navas was incredible in goal, and Tim Howard was not. And that's not to say that there weren't. They did get outplayed a little bit here and there, and it's certainly not all Tim Howard's fault, but the difference in goalkeepers was huge that day. It's certainly not a great result to draw Honduras when you would have really liked to see a win, but all that matters is whether they qualify for the World Cup or not. I mean, if they don't, that's a debacle. If they do, this qualifying cycle was kind of a mess, but they ultimately got there. So,
I mean, I agree. I definitely agree. I think the United States, all they need to do is get to the World Cup, and the point masks a lot of the issues within the national team. But the point also gets the United States closer. If they had lost against Honduras, I think it would have been an issue, panic button over and over. But they got the point. Now they're clearly in position to qualify, and not have to. They kind of control their own destiny, lack of a better term. But Armand, I don't know, what were your thoughts on the USA Honduras game?
Well, honestly, like I was saying on Twitter, going back and forth, I thought the result was quality, but I thought the performance was very poor for lots of stretches of that game. Honduras looked like the better team, to be honest. USA looked disorganized, and they looked like honestly they could have been down 2-0, 3-0 at even some points of the game, which was it's kind of scary if you're a USA fan. But that switch to the 3-back line I thought was really important. And at the end, they got that last goal by Bobby Wood, which basically saved their chances at the automatic qualifying in the World Cup. I mean, I think without that, you would be talking about a completely different situation right now.
Absolutely. Now, no, it's 1 point from 6. what were your expectations from over the two games? Did you expect them to get 6 from 6, 4 from 6, 3 from 6?
I think 4 was a realistic expectation. I think they certainly could have gotten 6. I mean, I think anytime the U.S. plays in the U.S. In World Cup qualifying, they should expect to win with, possibly the exception of the games against Mexico. But even that, I think, the U.S. should expect to get a result against Mexico in the U.S. I do think, having gone to a lot of these road qualifiers in CONCACAF, I was at the last 2 qualifiers in Honduras, not this one, but the one in 2009 and the one in 2013. And I think if you've never been to one of those games, you kind of don't realize what a difficult environment it is. Terrible fields, very hot conditions. They played this game in the middle of the afternoon because the U.S. players wouldn't be used to the heat. Intimidating. And so I think, a tie, I think a lot of people expect wins on the road in CONCACAF. And I think the U.S. certainly could have beaten this Honduras team just because they're not as good as they've been in the past and sort of had a poor run in qualifying. But I think realistically, thinking that game, you should have beaten Costa Rica at home and then tied against Honduras. That would have been sort of the realistic expectation in my mind.
Yeah, I think Honduras, San Pedro Sula is a really intimidating place. I mean, I read that monologue from that writer who said it was one of the intimidating places in CONCACAF. It is a tough game, and again, against a team like Honduras, a draw is impressive. Well, not really impressive, but quality on the road. I think it was just more the performance that was put out, if that makes any sense. I mean, I'd be 100% okay with a draw. Number one advocate, I mean, draw on the road when you're home games. But I just think that the way they played, it was kind of a sign of worry. It was.
Well, it was
it wasn't the best performance,
No, it's like the eye test where team won, but you just say it just wasn't a good performance. Like you just the eye test in sports, the eye test means a lot. When you watch a game, a team could have won 1-0, but you're like, boy, did they get lucky there. It was just not a good performance from all around. I think the U.S. men's national team showed that. Yeah, they got a big point, but that big point masked a lot of the issues. Who's to blame more, Bruce Arena or the players?
I thought Arena, who had been very, very good since he came on, kind of missed a little bit. I didn't think that Christian Pulisic was very good out on the right wing, either against Costa Rica or in Honduras. I think he has shown that he should be the center of the field. The offense should run through him. So it was a little disconcerting to see him out on the right.
Why do you think he did start him on the wing?
He's done that away in the past. He did that in the Panama qualifier, and Christian created that goal that got the tie. So I can see that maybe in Honduras, although even now I think that Pulisic has proven that he should play in the center. It was very confusing to me at home. I think the idea was to get him in some space out on the wing. And so maybe he could go one-on-one, but it was very clear that both Costa Rica and Honduras kind of looked at the U.S. team and they said, okay, this is the only guy who can, hurt us with the ball at his feet. So we're just going to double team him. And then when he gets a little bit of space, we're just going to knock him down. Yeah. And so I don't think that, I think the idea to move him out to the right wing, I understand that philosophy, but it was very clear early on that it wasn't going to get him space. And so I think you could have made some adjustments. And I think they did. I think he moved a little more centrally towards the later stages of the game in both games. So I think that was one of the things. And to your point, I mean, the Honduras, the result is fine. But the chances favored Honduras. They easily could have had a couple goals. And I think that's the thing about soccer is that, there are so few goals that the result very often is not indicative of what actually happened in the game. It's not like basketball or football where the better team generally wins in those sports. But because there are so few goals and those are the only things that actually matter, I think the results are sometimes deceiving. And that Honduras game for sure is one of those.
Yeah, no, I mean the Honduras game is it was interesting to see because of the weather, the time, starting at this high high point of the afternoon. It's hot. But what about the MLS aspect? Because Bruce Arena kind of got away from the European players against Honduras and went MLS heavy. Do you think there was a reason why he did that?
Yeah, I do. I think one is that the European season is very early, so I don't think those guys are as fit as they are. I think two, it was really, really, really hot in Honduras, and the MLS guys hold up a little bit better. Most of the European teams play in pretty cool environments. It probably is never, 95 degrees in Stoke, where Jeff Cameron is playing, although I was a little strange to see Cameron not play. I think the MLS guys just held up better, and I think a lot of those guys couldn't end up playing 2 games in a row, and so he kind of, went with more of the European guys in Harrison at Red Bull Arena, and then went with the MLS guys in Honduras. I think also, Honduras has a lot of MLS guys, so there's some familiarity there, which may have played a role as well.
What about Bradley and Acosta in the middle? Armand, you've been advocating for those two to play with each other since the Gold Cup.
I like those two ever since actually the Mexico game where you saw Bradley play a lot better with Acosta doing all the dirty work and Bradley being able to focus on one thing. I thought Acosta played well. I mean, he had that free period playing him at left back, and Lapio killed Jurgen for that, but they had to do it. I thought the Acosta Bradley pairing was fine. I think the MLS heavy side was also fine as well because, like you said, Noah, they're more into the season. And also some of these players have played in CONCACAF Champions League, so they've played in conditions kind of like the one in Honduras. I know FC Dallas did when they played Oribe Unido. I know some of those players have experienced that as well. So, I think I don't have an issue with him going with the MLS heavy side.
I don't either. I definitely see why. It is going to be interesting to see what Bruce Arena does in about a month's time when you have these 2 massive games coming up. It's going to decide whether the United States qualifies or goes into the playoff. And then, what about? Why do you think we've come to this point, Noah? After the Klinsmann era with the Bruce Arena. Bruce Arena started 14 games unbeaten. He was rolling. He had won the Gold Cup. But how of a sudden have we shifted over a period of, 10 days from the United States looking to be, okay, they'll be fine, now to kind of people hitting that panic?
Because that's what happens. The U.S. has a couple. They have a bad. One, those were 2 bad results. So I think let's start there. That Costa Rica to get 0 points against Costa Rica at home is bad. So I think it's right to not panic, but at least let's acknowledge that fact. And 2, I think the U.S. fan base just swings wildly based on not even the form of the team, but based on the results, which is something that I think I've tried to, take a little bit more of a middle ground and say, okay, well, what's actually going on here? So, I think there are reasons to be concerned, and the qualification road got tougher and not easier, over after the last 2 games, and so that's a bad thing. But I think that the panic is something in the U.S. fan base, and it's very much a what have you done for me yesterday kind of thing, which is not healthy or helpful.
My thing is, I think a lot of United States fans, they underestimate the other sides in CONCACAF, like the Honduras, like the Costa Rica, like the Panama. I think they feel like these teams are, as one of my friends put it, like Malta, like they should be crushing these teams. And to be honest, I think these teams are a lot closer to the U.S. quality than we think. And I would be pressing the panic button right now because of the way that they were playing. But these teams aren't just rollovers. These teams are still quality sides, and especially playing in some of the Central American countries is relatively tough. Now, does that excuse their performances? No, but I think people don't realize that these sides are still quality and still great sides.
Now, Noah, you said something interesting. You said you want to take the middle ground approach because you think the U.S. fan base swings according to the results, and I definitely agree. But could